Horrible.
Gosh.
A lot of people jumped out of windows there. February 11th, 1962, Julian Frances Sloan jumped from the 8th floor. She was 47 years old. Her body hit the 2nd floor roof. She was at the Cecil for a week before this. No one knows. Left no notes behind. No one knows why she checked in, why she was there, or anything. But
some of these jumpers might have actually been pushed by people too.
They could have been. The first one that I talked about, I'm almost positive that one did, because the whole thing with the manager saying, "Oh yeah, he was asleep." How do you know where he was sleeping? What were you doing in there?
Right.
Yeah. Or maybe the manager did it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Now Julia Frances, she was alone. She checked in by herself. Like, she was no one with her. Doesn't mean no one came in, I guess.
It's true.
Yeah. So, anyway, next person here. October 12th, 1962. 27-year-old Pauline Otten was staying at the Cecil with her husband. The two had been estranged before this, and she had just stopped over where he worked and said, "I really want to get back together." And they thought, okay, let's check into the Cecil.
Because that's where
earlier
people go for romance.
Yeah. Just see if we can work things out. Her husband said that he left to go get them dinner, and while he was gone, she plunged herself to the sidewalk below. What? Yeah. But this is the worst part. She jumps out of her room, and this man's walking by, and she lands on top of him.
Oh.
George Giovanni, and killed them both. So this poor man's walking down the road.
That's awful.
And a person comes flying out of the sky and crushes him. It's horrifying.
That is terrible.
The timing, the odds, like, I guess it's your time to go if that happens, right? Like, what are the odds?
This is a depressing episode, Colleen.
I'm sorry.
I'm so depressed. This is terrible. Depressing and terrible.
Okay, now we're going to get into another. Well, they said there was 2 murders, but I'm telling you there's more than that in this hotel.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The first, they count the
Only
baby.
2?
They count the baby as one of the murders, which the baby technically was.
Right.
And then this other one, in 1964, a longtime resident, Goldie Oswald, a.k.a. the Pigeon Woman. She got the nickname because she loved to feed the pigeons on the square nearby.
Okay.
Everyone loved her. She was well liked by everyone in the neighborhood. They know her. She'd sit there with her Dodgers hat on, and everyone knew who she was.
What year was this?
This was in 1964.
Okay. I could see it.
Yeah. Picture it. L.A.
1964.
She was 65 years old, and she had lived at the Cecil for 6 years. Like I said, it was at this point, people were, like, living there. They were renting it monthly. They also still have nightly rooms and things like that. But it was kind of transitioning to more of a permanent residence for a lot of people that were kind of down on their luck because they found it cheaper than living in an apartment. Everyone loved her, like I said, in the neighborhood. And she, June 4th, an employee, Logan Clonan, found her door was unlocked while he was trying to deliver, I think it was telephone books. And so he went to knock, and the door opened, and he's like, "That's weird." And he found her inside. She was stabbed above the left breast and strangled. And she had been sexually assaulted.
Ugh.
Mm-hmm. The first suspect the police thought was Jacques Engelin. He was a resident at the Cecil for some time. And when they found him, he had blood stains on his clothes and scratches on his face, and someone had bit his thumb.
Yeah, that's not suspicious at all.
Now, 3 weeks before Osgood died, was found, a 50-year-old woman named Virginia Brown, I can't read my own handwriting, it's terrible, was at a different hotel, which is just blocks from the Cecil, was also stabbed, raped, and strangled with her own stockings. There was another person. Her name was Martha, I think. She was found similar way, and she also liked to feed pigeons. So there was 3 ladies killed within weeks of each other, kind of similarly. Mm-hmm. Jacques was released from custody because the police just said they didn't have anything on him, and they didn't think he killed Goldie.
Well, the LA police department.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Especially this time, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, they were not doing well.
A of the podcasts I listen to have referred to them as the hot dog squad.
Yeah, they're not good. And they just don't care about this area. They just don't care. There's a lot of people that are crazy. They have diagnosed mental illnesses, drug addicts, prostitutes. There's a lot of
low income.
Yes, people homeless. And then our houses, people don't have much. They're about to be homeless. Like, they don't care. This case went cold. No one ever found her. She's never got justice. It just went away. So 3 women were killed.
They basically know who did it.
I don't know. They don't know.
That man had blood on his clothes.
Well, yeah.
On his face.
He could have been the one that did it. But they don't say why they let him go. They just said he didn't kill her. Mm-hmm. So it makes you wonder, like, what did he have on them? What did they get in return? Why did he get released? Like
they didn't want to do their job.
They didn't want to do their job.
This is my blood. Okay. I scratched myself. Okay.
I know. I bit my own thumb.
Okay. Works. All right.
In 1975, a woman registered as Allison Loette stayed in room 347. 4 days later, she fell from the 12th story and landed on the 2nd story roof. So that's 2 people that did that same exact thing.
She fell or she jumped?
It just says she fell.
Mm.
She fell so hard that her facial structure was so damaged she was unrecognizable.
Ugh.
No one knows her real identity. Her name was not Allison because it wasn't real. They couldn't find anything. And no one knows if she fell, if she jumped, what happened. But no one cared because no one bothered looking. So it never was solved. Lots of unsolved. Lots of people, they say fell. They don't say if it was suicide.
Right.
Because, again, LAPD. Don't care. If you're who you are, depending on where you lived and what was going on, and it still happens today, unfortunately, where people, your income level, your color, your race, your whatever, depends on how hard they're going to work.
Or your
figure it out. Mental health status, anything. So, the 80s, now, if you didn't think the Cecil was bad before, the 80s took a real low point for them, okay? Drug use was at all-time high. They were transients living in the area. Violent crime was happening all around the Cecil. I want to call it Cecil. It's not a Cecil, it's a Cecil. But I want to call it Cecil for some reason. Because, I don't say things right.
It's okay.
So there's a lot of...
It's part of your charm,
It
Colleen.
sure is. A lot of bad people living in and around this area. The most infamous resident to stay at the Cecil was the one and only Richard Ramirez, a.k.a. Night Sucker, a.k.a. as Morbid would say,
Stanky Chops.
Stanky Chops.
Stanky Chops.
Stanky Chops lived
Ramirez.
there. He lived up on the...
known as, they've renamed him, and I think it's the best name.
I know,
Stanky
it's
Chops.
hysterical. Stanky Chops.
Because he had
really bad breath.
Halitosis.
Bad halitosis. He probably didn't bathe often either.
Well, he had bad teeth. He had really bad teeth.
Ramirez, he lived on the 14th floor, and he paid $14 a night for his room, which was a really good place for him, the 14th floor, because the staff said the higher you went up in that building, the worse the people were. And they stayed clear. The staff wouldn't go up to the 14th floor. They didn't want no part of it. And that's where he was. Nice. He loved playing his music super loud. He stayed to his room for the most part. He listened to metal music super loud. Probably annoyed everyone around him. But the hotel itself wasn't... There was a lot of bad stuff going on around it. Let's just say that. So much so that Ramirez would go out and kill someone, come back and strip his clothes off in the alleyway and walk in his underwear, without shoes, right through the lobby, right up the stairs. No one blinked an eye.
Well, he kept his shoes for a while.
Did he keep his shoes?
That's one of the things that they were looking at because he left.
Oh yeah. So it must be he wasn't barefoot. But he was in his underwear
until the stupid idiot.
Maybe he was carrying his shoes because he was barefoot. So maybe he had his shoes in his hand.
Maybe because he left shoe impressions until the stupid media released the shoe type, and then he
changed his shoes.
And then then he started to be barefoot.
This is 6 weeks before he was caught. So I think it was probably around there. He was but he would walk in there with blood on him, stripping down half naked in the alleyway, coming in half naked. No one thought one thing of it. Not one thing. You could walk in naked and no one batted an eye because the stuff that was going around there, it was just bad.
That was just normal.
Yeah, it was normal. It was like, oh, this dude that lives on the 14th floor that we're afraid
looking
of.
for some guy who keeps breaking in and murdering people. Keep on the lookout.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably that dude. It probably was that dude.
Yeah. People were interviewed after later on, like the bartender said that if you looked him in the eyes, it was nothing there. It was bad. Like he would sometimes come down and have a drink, but often kept to himself in his room.
It's so weird that this place had a bar in it.
Yeah.
And it was a hotel, but it was like...
It was fancy.
Yeah, but it
wasn't.
I know, it's so weird.
Like this hotel that cost $1 million in 1920 to build in a beautiful Art Deco style, Richard Ramirez could afford to stay there. So that doesn't tell you a lot.
And it's like on the top floor that nobody went to because terrible people lived up there.
Yeah. And during this time, LA, people were living in fear when it came to nightfall because the Night Stalker was going to kill you.
Yes.
No one knew where he was. He had no rhyme or reason to any of the stuff he did, so no one knew why he was doing it or where he was going to go next. So, so he stayed there until he was caught. So he was actually living in the hotel for 6 weeks up until the time he got caught. So, if you have not heard, you should listen to the Morbid episode about him because they're so good and I love them.
They really are.
And learn about how he got caught because it's the best justice, I think, when he got caught by... Anyway, I'm not going to say it because you should go listen to it.
There's a lot of women who love him and want to marry him.
There's a lot of sickos out there, let me tell you. So, that's the Ramirez end of the staying at the Cecil. Then there was a man that was accused of killing his girlfriend on Huntington Beach. He was arrested and he was in the Cecil. So that was in 1988. In 1991, for 5 weeks, an Australian serial killer named Jacques Underweger, I think that's how you say it. Underweger, that's it. He stayed at the hotel.
I think that last podcast on the left did him.
Did he? Mm-hmm. So go listen to the last podcast, his episode. Underweger. So,
Jacques Underweger.
The worst part of this whole thing is Jack, while he was in Australia, had been released from jail where he was for murdering people. They let him out as an example of rehabilitation.
Uh-huh.
And he started working for Australian Magazine as a true crime writer, which is insane.
Uh-huh.
And
because he wrote a book.
Yes, while he was in jail.
Prison,
yeah. And while he... they think that he stayed at the Cecil or decided to go there because of the connection to Ramirez, because he was a nut too. But it is a perfect place for this man because it was an area surrounded by prostitutes and that's what he wanted to get.
Yes, that's what he killed.
So while he was staying at the hotel, he stalked the prostitutes around the area and he would sexually assault them. He killed 3 prostitutes, strangling them with their bra. That was his MO. Mm-hmm. And like I said, he decided to stay there. I mean, he was caught and there was a lot of stuff where he went back and forth to Australia because they said...
Australia or Austria?
Was it Australia? Oh, probably Austria.
I think it was Austria, Colleen.
I bet it was Austria because of his name. It makes me think that... Unterweger, yeah. So he got, brought back there because that was where he was from, but then they ended up bringing him back to try... I don't know, you have to listen to a podcast about his story. That's just a little blink. But the fact that he stayed at the Cecil is not surprising, really. Right. And then... Ramirez too. So this is just there's such a dark history in this hotel. Yeah. And yes, people die in other hotels. For sure they do. But the weird mysteries that, unsolved stuff that happened here and the amount of people that jumped is insane to me.
The amount. Yeah. I don't know if you could say the same about any other hotel
no.
I've heard of.
No.
Every year.
Yeah. For years. Every year someone was doing it. September 1992, an African-American man in his 20s was found in the alley behind the Cecil. They feel he fell from the roof. They couldn't tell if he slipped, was pushed, jumped. They don't know. But they don't know. They never even identified who he was. They didn't know who he was. He was just a John Doe, and they just wrote it off. And, being an African-American male, it made probably less worthy of the police to bother because the LA police was super racist.
It's the early 90s?
Yes.
No. Never.
In 1995, murder suspect